Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Kay Quinn. It's 7:05 in the bi-state, and that means the polls in Missouri and Illinois have been closed for 5 minutes now. And we're going to be watching those returns as they come in. Of course, election results will take a little while, so still take a deep breath, relax. We will be here with you online right through 9:30 tonight, and of course, we will also be on your usual place you find us, on Channel 5 on KSDK at 10 o'clock with full local coverage. We have so many big races going on tonight, so many things to talk about. Joining us now, political reporter Casey Nolan. And Casey, you know, I've been thinking about this. We've covered so many World Series. I covered a Super Bowl, a Stanley Cup.
Sure.
So many sports analogies tonight, Casey. We have winners and losers. We have a running score. We have predictions. There are underdogs and comebacks and game plans. And a lot of elections are called horse races.
Yeah.
I could go on and on.
At some point, the winner gets a parade, I suppose.
That's right.
In
a way.
And maybe the biggest analogy that we can build from there, just like with sports, no fans in the stands. I mean, we've heard from our reporters in Jeff City, in Springfield, Morgan Young, and Sarah Maki, PJ, all of the folks are not all a typical election night for the candidates either. Most of them are staying home with their families, saying that
they're doing it virtually this year.
Yeah.
And you know what, Casey? It was Dan Coats, who was President Trump's first director of national intelligence, who apparently was the one that called the 2020 election the Super Bowl of elections. So it's actually a thing, you know, according to Dan Coats.
And we'll just stick with this analogy, then maybe we'll let it go. But we're in a sports town, so maybe it's okay.
We are.
The Super Bowl, when you're in it, is the biggest thing ever, right? But then next year, that game is everything. And who remembers last year? And I think that's where we are now. For as big as Mr. Trump's win, his upset victory was in 2016, a lot of people feel that this is a much bigger race, and who knows? I think that's the one thing maybe we can all agree on, no matter what our political stripes, is that we are prepared to expect the unexpected in not just politics, but everything in 2020.
And in fact, that's a perfect lead into the person who's running our teleprompter tonight, Scott Connell. If all kinds of unexpected things could happen.
It is a team effort, again, and then Colin Jeffrey, one of our producers, you might hear him from time to time. He wants no part of this. We literally just told him today, I said, Colin, you're going to be talking to us. I need to be able to communicate with you. You're going to be watching what's coming in. How about you sit on the set? Okay. How about you put on a mic? Okay. So
you really had to twist his arm.
Right. If you have a disembodied voice, if you hear one, it's Colin Jeffrey just off screen.
Well, and just so people know, Casey, we are both in different studios.
We are,
so, you know, I've been taking my mask off, obviously, to put lipstick on and get ready to go on the air today. It feels a little weird because we have more people in the newsroom than usual.
Yep.
But the good news is you and I are separated by an entire room.
Yeah, we're in two separate studios. We've taken a lot of precautions. And it's a lot of things not as normal to pull this off.
Well, and that leads me to the next thing, which won't be as normal, especially for people watching on KSDK.com, and that is you may see a little bit of black because we're going to be tossing to and from our local news cut-in that airs on NBC. And Mike Bush is anchoring that along with Ann Allred, I believe. And so if you all of a sudden see things go black for a little while on the digital side, KSDK.com, you're going to know why. But just stick with us because we'll be getting right to the rest of our program.
We're here through the whole night.
We are.
And we're giving you that breakdown really at the county level. You know, if you're a fan of Steve Karnacki, I tried this joke out on Colin. Or if you're a fan of Steve Karnacki, Chuck Todd, Lester Holt. I'm sorry, they're not here, but we do have a map.
You're our Steve Karnacki. Are you any good with the map?
We'll see.
Because
I've been practicing. He's the best.
Our
map right now doesn't have a lot of information, but it will start to populate as information does come in. We are watching a lot of things very closely on both sides of the river. In Illinois and in Missouri. In Missouri, we're going to be focusing in on Missouri's 2nd Congressional District. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Let's see if I am any good with the map. On the Illinois side of the river, we're going to come down here. That is from 2016. which allows us to compare data. So pay no attention to these squares just yet. That will be information for compare and contrast. But we do have races on the Illinois side that we'll be watching as well. And if you've seen any of our political coverage so far this season and over the last couple of years, then you will likely recognize this next face. University of Missouri St. Louis Assistant Professor of Political Science and 5 on your side political analyst Anita Mannion is back with us tonight. Anita, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. You are in yet another studio, so we can be as real time as possible, but yet not in the same room for safety's sake. We were talking before we went on the air. Okay, let's just for the sake of argument say that the presidential race in Missouri and in Illinois is not going to be that close on either side. Most likely Joe Biden takes Illinois, most likely President Trump takes Missouri, but we do have some close races and we have the commercials to prove it. Talk to me about what you have been looking at and what we've been talking about for a few weeks now, especially. I'll flip the map and let's go back to the Missouri side. When you think about the St. Louis area, tell me what you're looking at and what is so close.
Yeah, there aren't that many competitive House races. Even though there are 435 House seats up for grabs this year, only about 6% of those are toss-ups. And we have 2 right here in our region. So Missouri District 2 with Ann Wagner and Jill Shoup is one of them, like you were showing on the Missouri side. And that is a very competitive race. And like you pointed out, we're seeing all the commercials because they're raising so much money, both from their campaigns and within the state, but from outside the state and from super PACs, congressional committees, and the parties. They're investing a lot in that race. The same is true for Illinois 13.
Okay, before we go Illinois 13, we have a map here that you can kind of see. This is, here's the river here, here's St. Louis City, North St. Louis County, then all of South St. Louis County, a lot of West St. Louis County, a little bit of Northern Jefferson County, a little bit of Southeastern St. Charles County. That is Mo 2. That is the Missouri 2nd Congressional District. It has been Republican, what, Anita, since the 1990s or so. This is Republican incumbent Ann Wagner, who won pretty easily 2 or 3 terms ago. Last time in 2018, she held on to it with a narrow-ish victory. By how many points or so did her Democratic challenger come within?
So she won re-election several times by more than 20 points. But in 2018, Court Van Ostren really narrowed that gap and made it only a 4-point victory for Ann Wagner. And Jill Shoup is hoping to overcome even that 4 points. She's certainly a more known name in Missouri, a more experienced politician, and a more prolific fundraiser. And so I would think that she's going to make this race even more competitive than Court Van Ostren did. Jill
Shoup started out, if you've seen the commercials, we know she was on the school board. She also, though, was in the state house and in the state senate currently. Like you said, quite the fundraiser locally, but then as you already brought up, so the fact that, okay, recapping, we are one of only a couple dozen or so congressional seats in the entire country, 2 of on Missouri and the Illinois side, that are competitive. So they raised a lot of money, more than that district ever has before, and then outside money came in and doubled that. I was looking the other day, I think, I want to say, let's see, 18, 16, and 16, maybe 14 or 12, I forget, but toward the beginning of Ann Wagner's career in the Missouri 2nd, she could win this race with $100,000 or so. Now they're at about $17 million in ad money being spent when you're factoring in what the candidates raised and what the outside groups have raised. Things have blown up and we've seen it on TV.
That's right, and even just since 2018, the fundraising has, exponentially grown in that same district.
Okay, let's flip the other side of the river. Now we're on the Illinois side. This is Illinois 13. Give us a little bit, this is a rematch. Talk to us about what's going on in Illinois 13.
It is. It's been a Republican district, and it was a district that Davis won by just over 2,000 votes, less than 1% in 2018.
Republican
and now
Rodney Davis.
That's right. And now Londrigan's back to try to have that rematch and have it turn out differently. So this is one of those other very few toss-up districts for the United States House of Representatives.
Democrats think they've got the momentum. They think they can flip a couple more. They already control the House presumably, though, they see these as seats they can flip, and Republicans are obviously, they believe they're worth hanging on to.
That's right. And in that district, healthcare has become a real issue. It'll be interesting to see. One of the sort of liberal constituencies in the 13th are a couple universities, but with COVID, there might be fewer students on campus, so that could be a negative for the Democrats. But then we see sort of this surge and this higher turnout among younger voters, voters of color, and a shift with suburban college-educated voters. So that could be good for the Democrats. So we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Maybe on the Illinois side, certainly on the St. Louis, on the Missouri side, this is that suburban area where President Trump has said, suburban women, please like me. Do you see anything that we can learn from the broader national picture from the Missouri 2nd District?
Well, in the 2nd District, I think for Jill Shoup, she really needs to perform well in St. Louis County. So if she can do really well in St. Louis County, even though St. Louis County is Democratic, Hillary Clinton only won it with 55%. So if Jill Shoup could run up the margins in St. Louis County and then close it a little, particularly in St. Charles County. Democrats have been trying to make inroads there for years. They haven't been too successful, but they're hoping that 2020 will close those gaps a little in St. Charles County. So that's what Jill Shoup needs to do to win. Sort of put together one of those coalitions like Nicole Galloway needs and like Claire McCaskill's put together in the past. But Ann Wagner, to hang on to that seat, needs to maintain the margins that she's had in the past. Jefferson County should be good for her, and to keep those Republican voters turning out in St. Charles County.
Okay, the nice thing about doing this online is we have fewer. We don't have zero, but we have fewer time constraints. So I'm just going to talk out loud to Samantha Ware, our producer. Samantha, you tell me if we need to move on, and I will, because I know we have, as Kay mentioned, if you're just joining us, we do have to stop down from time to time to go on air on 5 on Your Side. But for now, we can keep talking. I'll tell you what, Anita, we'll come back to you. Because I want to get Kay back in the conversation. Kay, I don't know if anything struck you there that you heard Anita talking about, but it is fascinating when we start to become accustomed to Missouri being a blue state, a red state, and Illinois being a blue state. Kind of those seem like givens, although anything can happen in any given election, as we were just talking, at the lower congressional level, and maybe the gubernatorial race in Missouri. We'll talk about that later. That's where things get competitive. That's where things could be interesting tonight.
Absolutely. In fact, we were talking earlier, Casey, 56 of the U.S. House of Representatives seats that are up for grabs this time around, they're rematches that are exactly the same as they were 2 years ago.
I found that fascinating. And
it's amazing.
And one of them right here in our area in Illinois 13th.
With Rodney Davis and Betsy Londrigan, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Yeah. Well, we will see if voters give her any better marks than they did last time, or if things have changed. You got obviously going back to your original analogy and what's going on and how different the world is than 2 years ago or even just 8 months ago.
Right.
A lot of factors. It's going to be fascinating to see what is important to voters and how that expresses itself in the results.
That's right. Well, early voting, Casey, as we know, has shattered records. Ann Allred talked with an expert on whether that means a backlog of results. Take a look.
Joining us is Dr. David Kimball, a professor at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Thank you for being with us and giving us a few moments of your time and expertise. Let's talk about results coming in, when we're going to get them. Missouri officials are estimating that they should have about 99% of the votes counted by noon on Wednesday, November 4th. Now Missouri is a state where all votes have to be in at the election office by November 3rd. But talk about, do you think that's how this will happen? They'll have all those votes counted by noon on Wednesday?
Just about all. Missouri, they can start counting the absentee ballots right away when the polls close at 7 o'clock. And so usually those actually get counted first, the absentee votes, and then they're waiting for the polling place votes to come in, later in the evening after that. There are always some provisional ballots that can take longer to resolve, maybe a couple of days, but those tend to be a pretty small in number.
Now let's talk about Illinois. and when we'll have results from the state of Illinois? Because it seems to be a completely different, because ballots can come in until November 17th.
Right. Illinois allows absentee ballots to come in after Election Day, I think as long as they're postmarked by Election Day. And so it'll be a few days, a week longer, I would at least to get final results in Illinois. It'll take a little bit longer to get more final results in Illinois than in Missouri.
About, I think it's 8 states where officials say, we're going to have results for you by noon on Wednesday, November 4th. The other 42 are not saying that. When do you think we'll know who our next president is going to be?
That's a tough question. I mean, it's no state has their final results on election night. You know, you hope that they have enough ballots counted that it, you know, looks pretty clear who's going to win that state just with the way the count's going and what ballots are left to count. But we may not know who the next president is for, you know, for a few days, just because it's going to take longer to count the votes, in large part because many more people are voting absentee this year.
All right, well, Dr. Kimball, thank you so much for your input. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Ann Allred. We're heading into one of those breaks we talked about. We're going to go to black for a few minutes, and then you're going to see an update from Mike Bush on the other end. We'll be back after that. Don't go away. Stay with us all night long here on KSDK.com.
The polls have been closed in Missouri and Illinois, and the votes are being tallied, and there's a lot of votes to be counted. Good evening, I'm Mike Bush, and we're tracking election results from hundreds of races across the bi-state tonight, including several big ones. We're keeping an eye on the race for governor. Republican incumbent Mike Parson, the former sheriff of Polk County, trying to become the elected governor for the first time, facing off against state auditor and Democratic challenger Nicole Galloway. We are still waiting for results to come in this race. We have team coverage from both campaigns tonight. Let's begin with 5 on Your Side Sarah Mackey, who's live in Springfield, Missouri with Governor Parson's campaign. Sarah?
Right, people started pouring in about 6:30 tonight, and they're still coming in the door. Of course, the polls just closed about a half an hour ago, but whether or not Parson will win this gubernatorial race, that is still to be seen. However, there was a moment of applause out here tonight. That's when the state of Missouri flashed across the big screens out here. So the question of when we will see Parson, well, he took the day off the campaign trail to spend some time with his family at their home. And you can see that there are still people here waiting for him to arrive now. We're hearing from the campaign that he is optimistic that he'll pull out a victory in this red state. The polling has shown that race tighten on the way up to Election Day. And of course, we've seen a lot more spending now, too. The governor's really been pushing a message of law and order. Will that work tonight? We will find out. He's supposed to address the crowd once 100% of the votes are in. Live tonight in Springfield, Sarah Mackey, 5 on Your Side.
All right, Sarah, thanks. Parson's Democratic challenger Nicole Galloway is in Columbia for her election night party, and that's where we find our Morgan Young. Morgan.
Well, Mike, Missouri's only statewide elected Democrat is hoping to trade in her title of state auditor for that of the first elected female governor in Missouri. We have not seen Nicole Galloway here yet tonight, but she will be speaking on the stage behind me. We have spoken to members of her staff who say that all that high voter turnout that we've been talking about and reporting on, they are taking that as a good sign. We saw Galloway earlier today in St. Louis, where she was visiting different polling locations, and she says she takes this high voter turnout as a sign that Missouri voters want something different leadership out of Jefferson City, and she says that she is just the person for the job. So history could be made here tonight. We are at the Tiger Hotel in downtown Columbia for a very different kind of election night than what many of us have seen in the past. Mike.
All right, Morgan, and stick with 5 on Your Side at NBC News tonight. We're tracking results from close to 300 races along with the presidential race. You can also catch any results on KSDK.com and the 5 on Your Side app and expanded results, and we'll break down the races tonight at 10. Check out Casey Nolan and Kay Quinn on KSDK.com all night long.
Map, Kay. UMSL?
Webster.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
No, it's like a little behind the scenes shot.
Okay. Bill Hall, business management, political science, focusing specifically.
About 3 minutes. Okay. Just, no, leave that top side. Oh, everything. Rudy Giuliani, there's a lot of mics switching around. Yes. We heard you. Okay, if you could put it in there. So let me get this straight. The producer's not listening to me, but we can broadcast it. Okay, that's the first time. Thank you.
Welcome back to election night coverage here on KSDK.com. We are live with election analysis, of course, the latest results. I'm here with 5 on Your Side reporter Casey Nolan. And Casey, the St. Louis County Board of Elections says as of 7 p.m., turnout for this election was 78%, exceeded, of course, turnout in 2016. So not sure if that's a record. We'll have to look back into the statistics and the record books and see just how that shakes out in terms of history. But in any event, 78% of registered voters turning out to cast a ballot in St. Louis County.
In a pandemic.
In a pandemic, right.
People will disagree about the politics all the way from the Secretary of State on down to a lot of folks who are in charge of elections. But I do think we have to give them some credit. A lot of people would like to have this kind of voting access all of the time in Missouri, but they certainly stood it up in short notice, getting the mail-in, getting the absentee by mail, absentee in person, and then of course Illinois has had early voting for some time. They had more experience in that, but yeah.
And they had to do this so quickly too.
Absolutely.
Because really the pandemic started for us in March. So they turned it around really fast. The Associated Press has this statistic and this fact as well. Apparently, 1876 sets the record for elections when 81.8% of eligible voters went to the polls.
Give us that number again. What's the year?
1876.
Okay.
And they had 81.8% of registered voters go to the polls.
A near record, to say the least. And like you said, more than in 2016 in St. Louis County. We'll talk to Anita Mannion a little bit more about that later, our political analyst in an UMSL professor. There might be something to be said about the lack of turnout maybe in 16 or the passion this time. But for now, let's go to another guest that we have standing by. Dr. William Hall joining us in a separate studio, as we've been saying tonight for safety's sake. Thank you so much, Dr. Hall, for being with us. You have more titles than I can remember off the top of my head at this moment, but you're associated with at least 3 of our esteemed universities, Washington University, Webster. Do I have another one? Is there another? I want to make sure I get it correct.
Yes,
please, sir.
Maryville University.
Maryville, thank you, sir. You study political science and a lot of different aspects of that. First, let's just start broad and tell me what you were thinking going into today. What were you looking for? What were you hoping for? And did you see it on any given subject when it comes to just getting to the ballot?
Well, this is obviously a very historic election. Each presidential election has its unique characteristics, but I would have to say that without a doubt, this one is special because I see this election much more so than in the past, really being a reflection of who we are as a nation. It's not just about President Trump or Vice President Biden. I almost look at them as afterthoughts. This really is a question about who we are as a nation, who we are as a people, what are our values. And that's why I think this particular election is so critically important.
Because it wasn't just the pandemic and then the various responses or lack of response, depending on how you see it. Don't forget the other big story was racial injustice and the marching in the street, exponentially larger than we saw here locally in Ferguson. This went on around the country and around the world. Something that it seems like the news happens so fast, so much, almost daily. But that would have been the big story any other year. That would have been, and perhaps it is the top story. But when you got COVID-19 and so much else going on, interesting to hear you say that the 2 candidates at the top of the ticket to you are an afterthought. Expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, protests have been a very reoccurring theme. There's nothing new about protests. We were founded as a nation on protest. So that's nothing new. And civil rights, that's another reoccurring issue that has yet to be solved. We see that once again on the agenda. You mentioned some of the more recent civil rights protest-related issues, Ferguson, but that is a reoccurring theme that until we are serious as a nation in wanting to address that, it will continue to be a thorn in our side. The COVID obviously was a big issue. Some would characterize it as the defining issue of this presidential cycle. And I think certainly it was a major component, but I think really more so than the COVID, it was the response to the COVID and what it means to provide leadership and what it means to be serious about your responsibility that the people have entrusted you with. To me, those are really the issues that are being decided tonight.
And what it exposed about how this virus has impacted different communities in the St. Louis area and across the country, and the folks that ended up being more susceptible because of longstanding issues that we've had, and underserved and unaddressed issues. I'm curious if you see some of what we're talking about play out in the ballot box, maybe not so much dramatically, although officially in this election. I'm talking about Missouri's 1st Congressional District, but that upset win of Cori Bush over Lacy Clay, whose family had held that seat going back to 1969. Congressman Clay's father was born out of the civil rights movement of another era. Do you see, what did you think, what did you make of her knocking him off back in the primary, and now we expect to go on to Congress tonight as Missouri's first black woman congresswoman?
Well, I think in first glance, I think to many people it was a very surprising upset victory. But I think if you really analyze what occurred there, certainly William Clay Sr., first elected in 1968, the first African-American member of the House of Representatives in Missouri, and then serving until the year 2000, and then his son, Lacy Clay, carrying the banner for the 1st Congressional District. So in all, for 52 years, there has been someone with the last name of Clay representing the 1st Congressional District. And I think in more recent years, certainly since Ferguson, I think we began to see the winds beginning to shift. I think that the fact that Lacy Clay was not nearly as active, certainly visibly active, as he had been in the past, I think portend that perhaps the winds of change were on the move. And this Cori Bush, who represented a new generation, a new point of view, I think, as they say, the time was for a change.
Dr. William Hall, we appreciate you joining us tonight and giving us your perspective. Thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we are getting word that St. Louis County has their, Colin, tell me what you just told me.
Well, St. Louis County, it looks like, has started to post their first round of results. At this point, we're going to assume that they're likely absentee votes.
Okay.
Not a whole lot to glean from these, but we're looking now to see Ann Wagner and Jill Shoup.
Okay.
This race, we have, again, we don't know what percentage of the vote this is, but
And
Jill Shoup has.
And I just tried to pull it up on my phone. I'm seeing an error on the county website. So we'll get, I'll tell you what.
I got the same thing, Casey,
Okay,
the error,
good.
but I'm sure, you know, they're straightening it out.
Absolutely.
So
They've done, I think, fantastic work
they have,
throughout
and
all of this.
we'll keep following that. I want to say the Associated Press, Casey, is projecting the winner in Illinois for the Senate, pardon me, Dick Durbin, winning once again for U.S. Senate in Illinois, and also projecting former Vice President Biden as the winner of the presidential.
And we'll show you what the
in
numbers are that
Illinois.
we're getting in here. And a lot of times, as Colin and I were just talking off camera prior to talking to Dr. Williams, they can make a lot of those judgments based on where the votes are coming in. So check mark by Joe Biden for Illinois, only 1% reporting on this map here. However, because of where these votes are coming in, they can tell that they can make that projection. Again, official results won't be in for a couple of weeks, as they are every presidential election. But the projections, as we normally do them, they're saying Joe Biden. Let's bop out to the U.S. presidential race at the country level, Kay. And don't let me ramble. If I cut you off, say so.
No, I want to see how your map works here.
Well, so do I. Can't you tell as I scan? Here we go. Give it a second.
There it is.
Okay, so some things are starting to come in. Okay, this right here is breaking news if it holds, and it won't. Here's what you need to know about the map. There's no star. See Illinois? It's got the star. That means it's been called. We have a check mark here. Bounce over to Missouri. The votes are still coming in. Like if Colin just said, if in fact St. Louis County has been able to drop their absentee ballots, that's going to really color, for lack of a better word, Missouri results. But you can see that the president has picked up officially. Indiana has been called for President Trump. Kentucky has been called for President Trump. Tennessee. These are all things that he was expected to win. All states he was expected to win. West Virginia. He is leading as the votes come in Michigan. However, no check mark, no asterisk on the map. So that is not official. Same with Maine. Looks like Joe Biden has been, Vermont has been called for Joe Biden. And then you can see it gets close in Texas. That's something we're going to be watching. But nevertheless, let's stick to the local side here, Kay. Missouri governor's race, just a few votes in so far over in Jackson County. That, of course, is the Kansas City area. I'm guessing, well, that says 60%, so that'll be interesting to see how many people voted by absentee and early there, and if that's what they've already counted. But nothing official has been able to be updated so far from St. Louis County, but we are starting to get word that, as we just said, that they're getting our first report from St. Louis County. So we'll get that updated as soon as we can, Kay.
All right, sounds good. And that map's pretty impressive. Thank you, Casey. Let's talk about the women's vote. Women have outnumbered men at the polls in presidential elections since 1980. They're a powerful force. Here's Anna Allred with some perspective on what's top of mind for women as they cast their ballot.
We have Louise Wilkerson and Nancy Miller, co-presidents of the League of Women Voters from Metro St. Louis, joining us. Ladies, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good to be here.
If you had to say these are the top 3 issues for women who are voting in the presidential election in 2020, what would they be?
Women's role in society and the respect being there, and healthcare for the COVID, definitely. And then, gosh, anything involving their kids. You know, everything else fans out. It's like how they're treated by police, how they're treated by teachers, how they're treated just walking down the street by other people. That respect word keeps popping up in all of these conversations, you know, even with the medical care. Who's getting the most respect as far as who's getting adequate care? And why is that? And what can we be working on? We have committees that work on healthcare. We have committees working on all of these things, and that's not going to stop. That's going
we worked very hard to get the vote out for Medicaid expansion in August. Yeah, that was very, very important to us. And as you know, Nancy mentions respect for women. Well, we're concerned about certainly even less respect in many instances for women of color.
Okay, and let's talk about Black female voters. They have been a force in presidential elections more than any other group in the last several presidential elections. What issues are most important to them? What's motivating them? What have you seen on the ground during your voter registrations while talking to them?
I would say African American women this time around are very concerned about the pandemic and the way it has been handled. They are more likely to have lost a loved one or a good friend. I know the League lost a very good friend early on in the pandemic. And so we're concerned that maybe some of those deaths didn't have to happen. Aside from that, of course, healthcare. You know, healthcare is, I would say, a more serious issue in communities of color than white communities. Also, they are concerned about institutional racism and what they see is unchecked, unprovoked police violence. And then, of course, civil rights, voting rights, the whole issue of just flat out fairness.
All right, Ms. Wilkerson, Ms. Miller, thank you so much for your input.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, we appreciate the opportunity.
All right, respect, healthcare, and their children. Thank you so much, Ann. Important topics for women in this election. Stick with us. Mike Bush will have an update on election results coming up next. And you can also get the latest results, of course, on the 5 on Your Side app on KSDK.com. We'll be right back.